Good morning. Welcome to Ramblings with Joe. I don't have an early day today, but I'm up early, as is the case many days. So I have some new orthotics for my shoe. I think that's what they call them. Not 100% sure on that. I'll be trying them out today for the first time. The place that I go to get my shoes, they're very nice people. The orthotic. They are very nice people. They fitted my foot and made a mold, and I'm very hopeful that this is going to give me a lot of relief. I've had a lot of foot pain and couldn't explain why. After, I guess, 6 or 7 x-rays, it's finally decided I have high arches. The first x-rays I got, excuse me, allergy season is upon me. The first x-ray I got was at the expense of my job, because we thought it was a job injury because the foot gave out from under me while I was at work coming down some stairs. It turns out that it's high arches. Strangely, well, I guess it's not so strange, but the x-ray tech didn't call the diagnosis when I guess they just send their report to the doctor. But I'm surprised nobody caught that I had high arches, because the podiatrist said that I have extremely high arches and that I definitely need support. So at any rate, I'm hoping there's going to be a lot of relief today. Drinking Watchstand or coffee from your Bora today, and I tell you what, if you've had the Rwanda, give the Watchstander a try. You'll be just as pleased. So I've been thinking about things that we take for granted. I try to do that at least once a week. If you can remember to think about the things that you've taken for granted, you can be more appreciative of everything and everyone in your life. And the things that you take for granted are much less important than the people you can take for granted. And it's important to recognize that part of the human condition is the ability to become climatized toward the everyday things and people in your life. It's just how we're built. It's built from the environment we're in. If we are in the north, where it gets bitter cold and we have snow, I've lived there, you become accustomed to that. And as a child, I remember the first snowfall of every year being magical. By the end of that first week, when you're trudging through a foot of snow, it's not so magical anymore. It's just something you're putting up with. And by the end of the second week, the only time that you thought about the snow is when you caught a snowball upside the noggin. So, and in the South, we have a different natural problem: the heat. So it is June. July is coming quickly, but it is still June, and the temperature yesterday got up to 95 degrees. And that's not nearly the hottest it gets in Georgia, but it is something that we all just deal with. I have an outside job, so when I'm unloading a truck, the trailers that we get in, they're even hotter, and it's something that you can become accustomed to. And unfortunately, some of the people that begin to take that sort of environment for granted, that we become acclimatized to, well, they don't hydrate enough. Just like when you're in the northern climate, sometimes you don't dress warm enough. So that's one aspect of taking things for granted. The other one is taking people for granted. And the people around us that we interact with every day, the people we interact with every day can become the people that we take for granted the most, our loved ones, and what they do for us. Oftentimes, we lose that special connection because we start taking them for granted. And I had to ask myself, am I doing that? And yeah, to an extent I am. I have to admit. It's hard to admit when you're doing something like that, but I am. I take my wife for granted sometimes, and she's the most important person in my life. So, got to keep that in check. That's part of the human condition that we should strive to lose, but we never will. Not in my lifetime, anyway. Uh, People at work, sometimes I take them for granted. Um, and sometimes something has to go wrong before you realize how many times things go right. So I had a big issue at work on, let's see, must have been on Wednesday. And I was very upset at some people at work for the shape of my load, because it took me a long time to try and get a delivery done at a customer's. And eventually I had to give up, and I called my boss and I explained the situation. He said, yeah, bring it back. We'll fix it and you can deliver it tomorrow. Now, fortunately for me, I have a dedicated route, so a lot of times I go to the same exact spaces, and that was the case. But it was very frustrating, and of course, immediately I'm concentrating on the problem at hand. And why the hell can't these people load right? And, well, you know what? That was 2 days ago. Yesterday I delivered the product to my customer, and it was a unattended delivery. And today I'm having to look back in retrospect and say, you know what? Mostly the people at work do a good job. And my inability to recognize that caused me a lot of aggravation. If I could have stood back and said, you know, they got this one wrong, but 99% of the time they don't, I'd have had a much easier time of it and a much easier attitude to deal with both myself and the people around me. So those people should not be taken for granted as well. It's not difficult to see that in yourself. It is difficult to recognize that you're not accepting it in yourself. And that's something I have to do, and I have to recognize that, you know, I definitely I was taking those people for granted. And that won't stand. Really enjoying that coffee. So normally the coffee we drink with distilled water, and we add the minerals back in so that we can control the taste. And today I am drinking coffee with half controlled water and half county water or municipal water. And you definitely taste the difference. I didn't think that I actually would be tasting the difference to the extent that I can, but I definitely can taste the difference, and I ran out of distilled water. I'll pick up some more today. We've often thought about distilling our own water, but the amount of water that we'd have to distill on the weekly basis, whew. And distilled water is only I think it's like $1.30 a gallon or something like that, and I only use it in my coffee. It's the only place I use distilled water. My drinking water for work comes out of the filter system, out of the refrigerator. probably should change that. At our old house, I had installed under the sink a reverse osmosis system, and I may do that again. This house has our house now has granite countertops, and I've never drilled holes in granite. That's not something I've ever done, but I watched a bunch of videos trying to vamp up or ramp up to doing it without being afraid of cracking the granite, which would be a nightmare. Oh, I am sorry. I think that might be the first time I've ever yawned on one of these podcasts, but that caught me off guard. But we want to, I think I may install a reverse osmosis system. We do not have a lot of cabinet space in this house. I can count real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 small cabinets. So really only 5. You know, each cabinet has 2 doors. And that includes under the sink. So we're really hurting for cabinet space in this house. But I do love the house. It's a wonderful place to live. Yeah, work needs to be done on it, but that's life. You know, maintenance is a thing, no matter what you're talking about, and that includes the relationships you're in. Don't take people for granted. Appreciate the people you love. Appreciate the people you work with. I bet they do better. They do more good than they do bad. I bet. I am very appreciative of my job, and I'm very happy to have it. I am, however, appreciative also of my good coffee. Well, hello, Raja. How you doing this morning? Oh, this little girl does not like to be picked up at all. But we're going to pick her up this morning. So, I think that's pretty much it today. That's the whole topic. That's the whole, what I want to talk about. Get off my chest. Do my little podcast for the 2 people who listen. And to those 2 people, although my wife has said not to do it, I would appreciate it if you hit the like button. Because that makes me realize that there are people actually listening to the podcast. I don't care about the algorithm. I just like to know that my words aren't going forever into the ether and not being heard by anybody but myself. That being said, you're appreciated. And even if they aren't being heard by anybody else, I'm going to continue to do this because I think it's good for me. However, if there is somebody out there listening to this, I hope you have a great weekend. Today's Friday. And isn't it weird we consider Friday part of the weekend? I mean, Saturday and Sunday technically is the weekend, but my whole life I've considered Friday part of the weekend. And sometimes my Fridays are longer and harder than any other day of the week. Still, I consider it part of the weekend. I suppose it's because that's what we want. We want to get to the weekend, so Friday's part of the weekend too. Now we're there quicker. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you find peace, love, and dream. Until next time, ciao.